If you've been walking through your own life lately feeling like you're playing a character in someone else's story, like the person you built yourself into no longer fits who you're becoming, you're not having a breakdown. You're experiencing what Carl Jung called the cracking of the persona. And the fact that you're noticing it means your psyche just crossed a threshold most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You might feel it when you're at work, delivering the same professional performance you've mastered for years, but suddenly you're watching yourself do it from a distance. Or you're with friends, saying the things you always say, laughing at the right moments, but inside there's a growing sense of wrongness. Like you're wearing a mask that used to feel natural but now feels suffocating. Jung warned that this moment would come for anyone brave enough to grow. He called it the identity crisis that precedes real selfhood. And here's what most psychology gets wrong about this experience. It's not a sign that something's broken. It's a sign that something's finally ready to break through. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you explains why you can't just go back to normal, why forcing yourself to fit into your old identity feels impossible now, and why this uncomfortable phase is actually the doorway to the most authentic version of yourself you've ever been. If this resonates, hit subscribe, because this channel explores the psychological territories Jung mapped that most people never discover until it's too late. And drop a comment with one word describing how your old identity feels right now: tight, heavy, fake, foreign, whatever surfaces first. Number 1. The mirror moment. When you first notice you're performing, it usually starts small. You're in a meeting and you hear yourself using corporate language you've used 1,000 times. Let's circle back. Low-hanging fruit. Synergy. And for the first time, you hear how empty it sounds. Not wrong necessarily, just not you. Or you're at a family gathering, playing the role you've always played. The responsible one, the funny one, the successful one, the peacekeeper. And mid-conversation, something inside you quietly whispers, "I don't want to do this anymore." You've probably noticed this feeling comes in waves now. Some days you can still perform the old version of yourself without thinking. Other days, every interaction feels like you're translating your real thoughts into an acceptable language. You're exhausted in a way sleep doesn't fix. Not because you're working too hard, but because maintaining the performance costs more energy than you have. Jung described this as the first sign of psychological maturation. The persona, the social mask we construct to navigate the world, serves a purpose. It protects us. It helps us function. It earns us belonging and safety. But it was never meant to be permanent. Most people never question their persona. They live their entire lives performing an identity they unconsciously adopted at 15, 22, or 28. They become so identified with the mask that they forget it's a mask at all. You're different. You noticed. And that noticing changes everything. Number 2. The Jung story. When the heir to psychoanalysis couldn't recognize himself, Carl Jung was 35 years old when his persona started cracking. He was Sigmund Freud's chosen successor, the golden boy of psychoanalysis, professionally accomplished, internationally recognized, married with children, respected by everyone who mattered. On paper, he had built the perfect life, but internally, something was collapsing. He began having dreams that terrified him, visions of destruction, of buildings crumbling, of himself descending into underground caverns filled with strange figures. His colleagues thought he was having a nervous breakdown. His wife worried about his sanity. Even Jung himself wondered if he was going insane. But here's what was actually happening. The identity he had constructed, the brilliant psychiatrist, the dutiful son, the professional success, was no longer large enough to contain who he was becoming. Jung made a decision that would change psychology forever. Instead of medicating the crisis away or forcing himself back into his old identity, he leaned into it. He started what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, he withdrew from public life. He stopped publishing. He stopped trying to be who everyone expected. and he began exploring the psychological territories that were emerging from beneath his persona. He documented this journey in what became the Red Book, filling it with visions, dialogues with inner figures, and illustrations of psychological states he had no words for. His colleagues thought his career was over. Some wrote him off completely. But Jung was doing something revolutionary. He was letting his old self die so his real self could finally emerge. And when he came out the other side, he wasn't the same person who went in. He was more authentic, more whole, more psychologically alive. The persona hadn't been destroyed. It had been integrated into something larger. Jung later wrote, "The persona is a compromise between the individual and society as to what a person should appear to be. But this is not the true self. If your life feels like a compromise right now, you're exactly where Jung was when his greatest work began." Number 3, the psychological architecture. The 5 stages of persona collapse. Jung discovered that the cracking of the persona follows a predictable pattern. Understanding these stages helps you recognize where you are and what's coming next. Stage 1. The performance becomes visible. For years, you moved through your life unconsciously. You responded to situations automatically. Work persona, family persona, social persona. Each one activated without thought. Now suddenly, you can see yourself performing. You watch yourself smile when you don't feel happy. You hear yourself agree when you don't actually agree. You notice the micro adjustments you make to fit in, to be liked, to avoid conflict. This is not paranoia. This is consciousness expanding. The part of you that was always authentic, the self beneath the mask, is strong enough now to observe the difference between performance and truth. Jung called this the emergence of the observing ego. Most people never develop this. You did. Stage 2. The old stories. Stop working. You've probably noticed that the narratives you used to tell about yourself no longer feel true. I'm the type of person who doesn't finish the way it used to. The career you worked toward no longer excites you. The relationships you maintained feel hollow. The goals you chased feel meaningless now that you're close to achieving them. This isn't depression in the clinical sense. It's what Jung called the withdrawal of libido from external objects. Your psychic energy is pulling inward because something deep needs to reorganize. You're not losing motivation. You're losing identification with a false self. Stage 3. Social rejection of your transformation. This is where it gets difficult. As you stop performing the old version of yourself, the people around you get uncomfortable. Your family wants you to be who you've always been. Your friends expect you to show up the way you always have. Your colleagues want you to maintain your professional image. When you can't or won't, they interpret your authenticity as a problem. They say you've changed, and they don't mean it as a compliment. They offer advice about getting back to normal. They might even suggest therapy, medication, or rest. Anything to restore the version of you they recognize. Jung faced this exact resistance, and he discovered something crucial. The people who are most threatened by your transformation are often the ones who are most unconscious themselves. Your growing authenticity reminds them of the inauthenticity they're still protecting. This stage requires enormous courage because you're choosing psychological honesty over social acceptance. You're prioritizing truth over belonging. And humans are wired to fear exile more than almost anything else. But here's what Jung discovered. The right people don't leave. The ones who matter stay. And new people, operating at your new frequency, begin to find you. Stage 4. The void. Between identities. After the old persona cracks and before the new self fully emerges, there's a period Jung called the void. Nothing feels solid. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. This is the most disorienting stage. You might feel directionless, like you've lost your internal compass. Empty, like something essential is missing. Untethered, like you're floating without anchor. Uncertain about everything you once knew. From a neuroscience perspective, Your brain is literally rewiring. The neural pathways that supported your old identity are weakening. New pathways are forming, but they're not strong enough yet to feel stable. Jung insisted this void is sacred. It's the space where transformation actually happens. Most people panic here and run back to their old identity. They can't tolerate the uncertainty, so they rebuild the persona and call it healing. But you're still here. You're sitting with the discomfort. That takes a rare kind of strength. Stage 5. The self begins to emerge. You'll know you're entering this stage when small things start to feel clear again. Not the old kind of clarity, where you knew your role and played it well. A new kind, deeper, quieter, more certain. You make a decision that feels true without needing to justify it. You say no without guilt. You say yes without obligation. You move through your day with less performance and more presence. The self, in Jungian terms, is not another mask. It's the authentic core beneath all masks. It's who you are when you're not trying to be anyone. This emergence is gradual. One morning you wake up and realize you're not pretending anymore. You're at work, but you're not performing work you. You're just you, responding authentically to what's in front of you. Relationships shift, some deepen, others naturally fall away. Not because you pushed anyone out, but because the frequency you're operating on has changed. You attract differently, you connect differently. Jung called this individuation, becoming the individual you were always meant to be beneath the collective programming. Number 4. The shadow truth. Why this is harder than anyone admits. Here's the uncomfortable reality most spiritual content won't tell you. Authenticity is not always rewarded. Sometimes it costs you everything. Jung himself lost professional relationships, social standing, and his position as Freud's successor. He spent years isolated, questioning his sanity, uncertain if his career would survive. You might lose friends who can't handle your transformation. You might lose romantic partners who were attracted to your persona, not yourself. You might lose professional opportunities because you're no longer willing to perform in the ways that advancement requires. The persona wasn't just a mask, it was protection. It kept you safe, accepted, employed, loved. Letting it crack means losing that protection. And here's what makes this even harder. You can't explain this to people who haven't experienced it. When you try to tell someone, "I just can't pretend anymore," they hear, "You're being difficult." When you say, "This version of me doesn't feel true," they hear, "You're having a crisis." They're not wrong to be concerned. From the outside, it does look like you're self-destructing. Jung looked like he was losing his mind. He wasn't. He was finding it. But the distinction is invisible to people still living unconsciously. So you're going to feel alone in this process, not because no one cares, but because this particular journey can only be walked alone. The people who come out the other side of persona collapse describe it the same way. Terrifying, necessary, and worth every uncomfortable moment. Number 5. The integration moment. What becomes possible? When the mask falls. Once you've moved through the void and begun living from the self, specific abilities emerge that most people never access. First, you become essentially unmanipulable. People who try to use guilt, shame, or social pressure to control you find their tactics mysteriously ineffective. You've already faced the worst thing, your own inauthenticity. External judgment can't threaten you anymore. Second, your presence changes. You stop trying to manage how people perceive you. This creates a kind of groundedness that others can feel immediately. Some people are drawn to it. Others are unsettled by it. Both responses confirm you're no longer performing. Third, your decisions become faster and clearer. When you're not filtering every choice through "what will people think?" or "what's the safe option?" you have direct access to what Jung called the wisdom of the self. You just know what's true for you. Fourth, you attract differently. The people who enter your life now are responding to your actual frequency, not your performed version. Relationships that form after persona collapse tend to be deeper, more real, and more durable because they're built on truth from the beginning. Fifth, you stop seeking validation. Not because you've become arrogant, but because external approval no longer regulates your sense of worth. You have an internal anchor. Jung described this state as psychological freedom. Not freedom from responsibility or consequences, but freedom from the compulsive need to be seen a certain way. A woman I spoke with recently described it perfectly. She said, "I'm not less anxious about life, but I'm no longer anxious about being myself, and that changes everything." Number 6, the call, what this moment means for you. If you've recognized your experience in this video, you're not broken, you're not lost, you're not going backwards. You're in the middle of psychological individuation, the process Jung considered the most important work a human being can do. Most people never start this journey. They live their entire lives in the costume they built at 20, and they die never knowing who they actually were beneath it. You're doing something different, something braver. The discomfort you're feeling right now is not a sign that you're on the wrong path. It's confirmation that you're on the only path that leads to real selfhood. Jung spent his final years documenting what he learned from his own persona collapse. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you should be, not who others need you to be, who you are. Beneath the performance, beneath the compromise, beneath the mask, this is your privilege and your task." In the comments, leave one word that describes where you are in this process. Cracking, void, emerging, rebuilding, afraid, free. Whatever feels most true. And subscribe to this channel because we're going deeper into Jung's map of transformation. The shadow work that most people skip. The integration process that makes you whole. The psychological territories that change everything. You didn't find this video by accident. Your psyche led you here because you're ready for what comes next. The person you're becoming is waiting. And unlike the persona you're leaving behind, this version of you won't need to perform. It will just need to be. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.